At the U.S. Capitol yesterday, hundreds of rioters swarmed buildings. 4 people died during the incident, and members of Congress were evacuated to safety. The rioters tried to break into the House chamber. Police were drawing their guns. There was explosive devices that were found around the Capitol as well. Joining us to break all of this down, to figure out what entirely happened there, retired U.S. military intelligence officer, Lieutenant Colonel Steve Rogers. Thank you so much for joining us. I think we're all just in many ways horrified by that scene. You have the Capitol being breached for the first time since 1812. I mean, so many things to deal with, but I want to start first and foremost with how did that even happen, right? You talk about just the entirety of the history of this nation, that the People's House could be overrun in such a reckless manner. How has no one been fired yet? And number 2, how do we deal with the fact that we've arrived at this point where it seems as if the House is not secure at all?
Well, I am going to break this down for you. Great question. How did we get here? Well, to begin with, and believe me, I don't want to make this political, all right? This is an American issue right now. But to begin with, to place the sole blame on President Trump is so misguided, and I'll share with you why. There were 2 groups of people that showed up there. There were the peaceful protesters. You had about 100,000. And then you have other people who show up, blend themselves in with the peaceful protesters, and their mission is to commit acts of violence. They should be prosecuted. They should be placed in prison. But how did this happen? Years and years and years of failed leadership in Washington. Who were the protesters? They were the soccer moms, the PTA presidents, Main Street USA, if you will. So now you got all of these people are gathered. And then you have a breakdown in security at the Capitol. Believe me, I've been in law enforcement my whole life. I've been in situations where you have large crowds. The Capitol Police did the best they could with the equipment and tools they were given, which was very little. They should have been prepared. They should have had the National Guard there to begin with, knowing that you were going to have 100,000 people there. So it was a complete breakdown in security, a complete breakdown in intelligence and information, and this was the result.
You know, Colonel Rogers, I want to talk about some of what we know now went on prior to the rally, because we mentioned these explosive devices that were found near the DNC headquarters, the RNC headquarters, amongst others. What does that say to you in terms of pre-planning? Because you know, I'm sure, Joe, you know that the people that planned this rally initially, many people that went to the rally, as you mentioned, these were peaceful protesters. They did not go there in order for this to happen. This wasn't pre-planned by them, but does something like that show you that there was someone somewhere that did some pre-planning?
Oh, no question about it. And what alarms me is this is our nation's capital. Where was the intelligence gathering information? Look, I will venture to say that as the investigation continues, the police are going to find that there was chatter, perhaps on the internet about this between those who may have pre-planned, that there were people who had knowledge of what was going to take place. There's going to be a lot of forensic analysis of cyber footprints, if you will, when they start tracking this down. A total catastrophic breakdown in security like I've never seen before. Could you imagine? Just think about this. If these were well-planned terrorist attacks on our nation, I mean, it's just something that is going to give us a great, great wake-up call. So we have a lot of work to do to secure this nation. This should be a wake-up call.
Yeah, and looking at some of those images still today, shocking images of our Capitol being overrun. Colonel, thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate your insight.
Always a pleasure, and a happy birthday.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Well, in the wake of the unrest at the U.S. Capitol,